Ladies and gentlemen, there is a silent thief in this room tonight. It doesn't knock on the door. It doesn't announce its arrival. It slips quietly into your thoughts. It whispers, "You're behind." It says, "Look at them, they're further ahead." And before you know it, your confidence is shaken, your focus is scattered, and your joy is stolen. That thief is comparison. Comparison is the fastest way to turn gratitude into dissatisfaction, progress into frustration, and potential into paralysis. You could be making incredible strides in your life, improving daily, building momentum, becoming stronger, and one scroll through someone else's highlight reel can make you feel like you're failing. But here's what most people never realize: a comparison is not just a bad habit. It is a destructive mindset that quietly limits your growth. Tonight, I'm going to show you why comparison is dangerous, how it distorts your vision, and most importantly, how to break free from it permanently. Because if you don't master comparison, it will master you. And if you can't measure yourself properly, you'll never maximize yourself completely. Stay with me through these 6 principles. By the end of this talk, you will no longer measure your life against someone else's timeline. You will measure it against your own potential. Comparison feels natural. It feels logical. It even feels necessary. From childhood, we are ranked, graded, evaluated, and measured. We are taught to look sideways to determine where we stand. But here is the critical truth. What feels natural is not always what is beneficial. Comparison is built on incomplete data. When you look at someone else's success, you are seeing a snapshot, a polished, edited, curated version of reality. You see the promotion, but not the years of rejection letters. You see the thriving business, but not the sleepless nights and financial strain that built it. You see the confident speaker, but not the years they spent doubting their own voice. You are comparing your everyday reality to someone else's visible results. That is not a fair equation. Imagine judging a movie by watching only the final 5 minutes. You would see the victory, the celebration, the resolution, but you would miss the conflict, the setbacks, the failures that made that victory meaningful. Yet that is exactly what we do when we compare our lives to others. And there's another flaw in comparison: it ignores starting points. 2 people can begin the race of life at very different positions. One may start with financial stability, mentorship, education, and opportunity. Another may start with obstacles, limitations, and responsibilities that demand attention before ambition can flourish. To compare outcomes without acknowledging starting lines is to ignore reality. Success is contextual. When you compare without context, you distort your own perception. You begin to undervalue your effort. You dismiss your progress. You minimize your resilience. And over time, that distortion becomes discouragement. Comparison also magnifies weaknesses and minimizes strengths. You might compare your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 10. You might compare your struggle to someone else's stability. You might compare your uncertainty to someone else's clarity. But you rarely compare fairly. You don't account for the fact that you have strengths they may lack. You don't consider that your path may be building capacities that will serve you later in ways you cannot yet see. The illusion of comparison lies in this belief that someone else's success diminishes your own potential. It does not. Another person's progress does not subtract from your possibility. There is no fixed supply of achievement. There is no limited inventory of success. Someone else rising does not require you to fall. But comparison convinces you otherwise. It whispers that if they are ahead, you must be behind. If they are winning, you must be losing. That mindset creates unnecessary pressure and artificial scarcity. Now consider this powerful alternative comparison redirected inward. Instead of asking, "How do I measure against them?" ask, "How do I measure against who I was 6 months ago?" That is a comparison that builds you. Were you more disciplined this year than last year? Have you learned skills you once lacked? Are you handling challenges with greater maturity? Have you grown emotionally, mentally, spiritually? When you compare yourself to your former self, you create constructive tension, not insecurity, improvement, not envy, evidence of growth. Growth is the only valid benchmark. If you must measure, measure consistency. If you must evaluate, evaluate effort. If you must compare, compare progress. Because the only race that truly matters is the one between who you are today and who you are capable of becoming. When you understand the illusion of comparison, you stop being distracted by appearances. You stop reacting emotionally to someone else's milestones. You start focusing on your own development with clarity and intention. And that shift from external measurement to internal growth is the beginning of freedom. Comparison keeps your eyes on other people. Contribution keeps your eyes on your purpose. There is a profound difference between trying to outdo someone and trying to outgrow yourself in service of others. One is driven by insecurity. The other is driven by intention. Competition, in its healthy form, can sharpen your skills. It can push you to train harder, think smarter, move faster. But unhealthy competition, the kind rooted in comparison, is corrosive. It shifts your motivation from excellence to ego. Instead of asking, "How can I improve?" you begin asking, "How can I win?" And winning, when defined by beating someone else, is unstable, because there will always be someone faster, wealthier, more talented, or further ahead. If your confidence depends on being ahead of others, it will always be fragile. Contribution, however, creates durable confidence. When you shift your mindset from competition to contribution, you stop obsessing over who is ahead and start focusing on who you can help. That subtle shift changes everything. Now the question is no longer, am I better than them? It becomes, am I becoming more valuable? Value is the foundation of sustainable success. The marketplace does not reward comparison. It rewards contribution. Relationships do not thrive on rivalry. They thrive on generosity. Leadership is not about defeating others. It is about elevating others. Think about the individuals who leave lasting impact. They are not remembered because they defeated competitors. They are remembered because they solved problems, created opportunities, built systems, and served people. When your energy is spent on contribution, comparison loses its emotional power. Why? Because you are too busy building. Contribution also redirects your focus from scarcity to abundance. Comparison whispers that success is limited, that if someone else has it, there is less available for you. Contribution recognizes that success expands when value expands. If you improve your skills, you create more opportunities. If you increase your knowledge, you increase your influence. If you refine your character, you deepen your credibility. The more you contribute, the more you grow. And the more you grow, the less threatened you feel by someone else's progress. There is another powerful dimension to contribution. It builds identity. When you define yourself by what you give rather than what you gain, you establish internal stability. Your sense of worth is no longer dependent on applause, rankings, or comparisons. It is grounded in effort and impact. Ask yourself, what problems am I solving? What skills am I strengthening? What value am I creating? Who benefits because I showed up today? Those questions move you forward. Now, does this mean you should ignore competition entirely? No, competition can reveal your capacity. It can expose weaknesses that need refinement, but it should never define your direction. Competition should be a tool, not your identity. If you are constantly measuring yourself against others, you are operating reactively. You adjust your pace based on their movement. You adjust your goals based on their achievements. You adjust your confidence based on their visibility. Contribution, on the other hand, is proactive. You set your own standards. You define your own mission. You build according to your values. And here is the paradox. The people who focus most on contribution often outperform those who obsess over competition. Why? Because they are focused on mastery, not rivalry. They are improving the substance of what they offer, not merely polishing the image of success. Over time, substance outlasts comparison. When you shift from competition to contribution, you experience relief. You are no longer chasing validation. You are pursuing significance. You are no longer trying to win the room. You are trying to serve it. And service, when done consistently and with excellence, creates influence far greater than comparison ever could. So instead of asking, how do I measure up? Begin asking, how do I level up? That question will transform your ambition into impact. One of the most damaging habits tied to comparison is this measuring position instead of progress. Position asks, where do I rank? Progress asks, how far have I come? Position is external, progress is personal. When you measure position, you place yourself on a scoreboard you did not design, in a race you did not choose, against competitors you may not even know. And the problem with position is simple, it is unstable. There will always be someone ahead of you, always. If you are number 2, you feel behind number 1. If you are number 10, you feel discouraged by the 9 ahead of you. Even if you are number 1, you fear being replaced. Position breeds anxiety. Progress builds confidence. Progress is measurable in discipline, skill acquisition, resilience, and maturity. It tracks what truly matters, development, and development compounds over time. Consider this: small improvements, repeated consistently, create extraordinary outcomes. A 1% improvement each day may seem insignificant in isolation, but sustained over months and years, it transforms identity. The tragedy is that many people quit too early because they are watching position instead of tracking progress. You may not see dramatic results immediately. You may not receive recognition. You may not feel ahead. But if your habits are stronger, your mindset clearer, your skills sharper, you are advancing. Progress is often invisible before it becomes undeniable. There is a period in every worthwhile pursuit where effort feels greater than reward. During that season, if you measure position, you will feel defeated. But if you measure progress, you will stay encouraged. Ask yourself, am I more disciplined than I was 6 months ago? Have I strengthened skills that once intimidated me? Do I handle setbacks with more maturity? Is my consistency improving? Those are markers of progress, and here is something powerful. Progress restores agency. Position makes you dependent on external comparison. Progress puts you back in control. You cannot control someone else's speed. You cannot control someone else's opportunities. You cannot control someone else's recognition. But you can control your preparation. You can control your effort. You can control your growth. When your focus is progress, your energy shifts from envy to execution. There is also a psychological advantage to measuring progress. It fuels momentum. Momentum is created by evidence of advancement. Even small wins, when acknowledged, reinforce belief, and belief strengthens behavior. If you ignore progress, you starve yourself of motivation. Many people fail not because they lack potential, but because they fail to recognize improvement. They dismiss small victories as insignificant. They overlook incremental growth because it does not look dramatic. But success is rarely dramatic in the beginning. It is deliberate. The disciplined student improving study habits, the entrepreneur refining strategy after setbacks, the individual strengthening emotional intelligence in difficult conversations. These improvements may not elevate position immediately, but they elevate capacity, and capacity determines long-term success. Now consider the danger of position-focused thinking. It tempts you to rush. It pressures you to skip stages. It encourages shortcuts to catch up with someone else's timeline, but shortcuts often weaken foundations. Progress respects process. If you are building strength, you cannot skip repetitions. If you are building knowledge, you cannot skip study. If you are building character, you cannot skip challenges. When you measure progress, you honor the process. And over time, something remarkable happens. Position begins to change naturally. Not because you chased it, but because you earned it. Sustainable advancement comes from accumulated progress, not obsessive comparison. So redefine your scoreboard. Instead of asking, who is ahead of me, ask, am I ahead of where I used to be? That question builds confidence without arrogance. It builds humility without insecurity. It builds focus without distraction. Because at the end of the day, the most meaningful victory is not finishing ahead of others. It is becoming stronger than you were yesterday. If you want to break the comparison curse, you must learn to guard the environment where comparison is born. Your mind, every thought you entertain, every image you consume, every voice you listen to is shaping your internal standards. And if you are not intentional about your mental environment, it will be shaped for you. Comparison thrives in unmanaged environments. We live in an age where you can observe hundreds of lives in a single hour. Promotions, vacations, milestones, achievements, lifestyles, all displayed in polished, perfected fragments. What you rarely see is the depth behind the purchase, the stress behind the smile, the doubt behind the confidence. But your brain does not always distinguish between curated appearance and full reality. It absorbs what it sees repeatedly and begins to treat it as normal. And when unrealistic standards become normal, dissatisfaction becomes automatic. This is why protecting your mental environment is not optional. It is strategic. If you constantly expose yourself to triggers that provoke inadequacy, insecurity will follow. If your daily input reinforces scarcity and comparison, your output will reflect anxiety and self-doubt. You cannot plant seeds of envy and expect a harvest of confidence. Mental discipline begins with intentional consumption. Ask yourself, what conversations dominate my attention? What content fills my screen daily? Whose opinions am I allowing to influence my self-worth? Are these inputs strengthening me or destabilizing me? Ultra-successful individuals are selective about influence. They understand that attention is a limited resource. They do not scatter it carelessly. Protecting your environment does not mean isolating yourself. It means curating your influences wisely. If certain platforms provoke comparison, limit exposure. If certain conversations drain your confidence, redirect them. If certain relationships constantly measure status, establish boundaries. Boundaries are not walls of arrogance. They are filters of wisdom. There is another dimension to mental environment that is often overlooked in internal dialogue. Even in silence, comparison can echo. You may replay someone's achievement in your mind. You may exaggerate their success while minimizing your own. You may rehearse narratives of inadequacy that are not grounded in fact. Protecting your environment also means correcting your internal voice. When comparison thoughts arise, challenge them. Do I have full information? Am I ignoring my own progress? Is this thought constructive or corrosive? Replace distortion with perspective. You do not need to deny someone else's success to preserve your own confidence. You simply need to contextualize it. Another powerful strategy is intentional focus. The mind, like a lens, sharpens what it concentrates on. If you focus on lack, you magnify deficiency. If you focus on growth, you magnify potential. Gratitude is one of the strongest shields against comparison. When you deliberately acknowledge what is working in your life, your strengths, opportunities, relationships, lessons, you create emotional stability. Gratitude shifts your attention from what you lack to what you possess. And attention determines emotion. Finally, remember this, your mind is your headquarters. Every decision, every ambition, every action originates there. If that headquarters is under constant attack from comparison, your performance will suffer. But if your environment is fortified with clarity, discipline, gratitude, and purposeful input, your mindset becomes resilient. Resilience is not built accidentally. It is built intentionally. Protect your mental environment the way you would protect your most valuable asset, because it is. Your future is not shaped merely by circumstances. It is shaped by perspective. And perspective is shaped by what you allow into your mind. Guard it wisely. One of the deepest roots of comparison is impatience with your own timeline. You look at someone else's breakthrough and assume you are late. You see their milestone and conclude you are behind. But the truth is simple and powerful. Life is not a synchronized schedule. There is no universal clock governing achievement. Some individuals reach financial stability in their 20s. Others discover their purpose in their 40s. Some build momentum quickly and plateau later. Others grow slowly, steadily, and outlast everyone. Different journeys, different pacing, different preparation. The problem begins when you treat someone else's timeline as your standard. When you do that, you create unnecessary pressure. You rush decisions, you abandon processes, you attempt to force outcomes that are not yet ready to be sustained. And often in trying to accelerate results, you weaken foundations. Strong foundations take time. Consider any meaningful structure, a building, a business, a body of knowledge, a disciplined mindset. The visible result is only as stable as the unseen preparation. And preparation is rarely glamorous. Your current season may feel slow. It may feel invisible. It may feel like effort without applause. But slow does not mean stagnant. Invisible does not mean ineffective. There are seasons of planting, seasons of watering, and seasons of harvesting. The mistake most people make is wanting harvest during planting. Growth beneath the surface is still growth. When you embrace your unique timeline, you remove destructive urgency. You stop asking, why am I not there yet? And start asking, am I building correctly? That shift changes your emotional state from anxiety to intention. There is also wisdom in recognizing that different goals require different gestation periods. Mastery of a craft requires years of deliberate practice. Financial independence requires disciplined accumulation. Emotional maturity requires lived experience. Rushing the process does not accelerate development, it compromises it. You may admire someone who achieved rapid success, but rapid visibility does not always equal long-term sustainability. Many who rise quickly struggle to maintain what they have not fully built capacity to manage. Capacity is developed over time. Your timeline is not random. It is shaped by your experiences, responsibilities, lessons, setbacks, and growth rate. What may look like delay could actually be preparation. Preparation strengthens you for the weight of future success. Imagine receiving everything you desire without the discipline, wisdom, or resilience to sustain it. It would collapse under pressure. Timing often protects you from premature exposure. When you trust your timeline, you stop competing with external milestones. Instead, you focus on readiness. Ask yourself, am I developing the character required for the success I want? Am I strengthening the habits necessary for long-term sustainability? Am I learning from current challenges instead of resenting them? These questions anchor you in development rather than comparison. There is also freedom in understanding that fulfillment is not linear. Life rarely unfolds in a straight, predictable progression. It includes pivots, reinventions, pauses, and breakthroughs. Your journey may include detours that later become defining advantages. What feels like delay may build resilience. What feels like setback may build wisdom. What feels like slow progress may build endurance. And endurance is often the deciding factor in lasting achievement. Embracing your unique timeline does not mean lowering ambition. It means aligning ambition with patience. It means committing to consistent action without demanding immediate validation. Progress compounded over time is far more powerful than rapid success that lacks stability. So release the pressure to match someone else's clock. Stop measuring your life by external deadlines that were never assigned to you. Your responsibility is not to move at someone else's speed. Your responsibility is to move with consistency, integrity, and preparation at a pace that builds strength. Trust the process you are in. Stay disciplined within it. Because when preparation meets opportunity at the right time, your progress will not just be visible, it will be sustainable. The final and most powerful step in breaking the comparison curse is this: build internal standards so strong that external opinions lose their authority. As long as your self-worth depends on outside validation, comparison will control you. You will measure your success by applause, your progress by recognition, your value by visibility. And all three are unstable metrics. Applause fades, recognition fluctuates, visibility shifts. If your identity is anchored to those variables, your confidence will rise and fall with them. Internal standards create stability. When you define success for yourself clearly, intentionally, and independently, you remove the need to constantly look sideways. Your measuring stick is no longer someone else's lifestyle, income, or timeline. It is your commitment to excellence. Internal standards are built on principles, not popularity. They ask, did I act with integrity? Did I honor my commitments? Did I apply disciplined effort? Did I improve my capabilities? Did I move closer to my defined goals? Notice the focus: behavior, not comparison. Effort, not ego. Growth, not ranking. When you live by internal standards, you shift from being reactive to being self-directed. You no longer need someone else to win for you to feel motivated. You no longer need someone else to lose for you to feel secure. Your confidence becomes evidence-based, evidence of preparation, evidence of discipline, evidence of consistency. There is another advantage to internal standards: they protect you from both insecurity and arrogance. If you rely solely on comparison, you will either feel inferior to those ahead of you or superior to those behind you. Both are distortions. One weakens confidence, the other weakens character. Internal standards keep you balanced. You can admire someone else's success without diminishing your own. You can acknowledge someone's strengths without questioning your worth. You can celebrate others while continuing your own progress. That balance comes from clarity about what you value. Define your metrics. If your metric is discipline, then each day you execute your routine is success. If your metric is learning, then each new skill acquired is success. If your metric is consistency, then each day you show up counts. You are no longer waiting for dramatic outcomes to validate your effort. The process itself becomes meaningful. Internal standards also require honesty. You cannot claim excellence without examining effort. This is not about lowering expectations to protect feelings. It is about setting high expectations that are within your control. You cannot control market conditions. You cannot control public opinion. You cannot control other people's advantages. But you can control preparation, behavior, and discipline. When your standards revolve around controllable factors, your confidence becomes resilient. Resilient confidence does not collapse under someone else's achievement. It does not panic when others accelerate. It does not inflate when others struggle. It remains steady. And steadiness is power. The strongest individuals are not those who constantly compare. They are those who clearly define what matters and relentlessly pursue it. They know what success means to them. They know what excellence requires from them, and they measure themselves accordingly. When your standards or internal comparison becomes background noise, you stop chasing image and start building substance. You stop performing for validation and start performing for mastery. You stop measuring status and start measuring growth. And once you reach that point, something remarkable happens. Peace replaces pressure, because now you are not trying to outrun everyone else. You are simply committed to becoming the highest version of yourself, one disciplined day at a time.